Well, let's go back a few years ago and Donald Trump entering politics, becoming a lightning rod and against all odds, winning the Republican nomination for the office of president. Well, today, the former president remains a contentious figure in the party, as well as a major player. David Brody brings us this look at factions inside the GOP and the possible impact on the future.
The days of Ronald Reagan seem long gone in today's Republican Party. The iconic Republican president was fond of saying that the person who agrees with you 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. Well, that's certainly not the case today within the GOP. The 2020 election changed everything.
Mitch McConnell didn't have the courage to challenge the election.
And with that, dividing lines were drawn, with Republicans like Congresswoman Liz Cheney on one side.
We must speak the truth. Our election was not stolen.
And Senate candidates like Ohio's Josh Mandel on the other.
I believe this election was stolen from Donald J. Trump.
Mandel and many others believe that is the winning stance in today's GOP.
There's only one candidate in this race for U.S. Senate who's willing to say that the election was stolen from Donald J. Trump. And I'm willing to say that because it's the truth. And I have guts and backbone and a steel spine. And I don't care if the liberal media attacks me.
Mandel seems to have strong backing on that side of the GOP. Current polls show 57% of Republicans saying they will not vote for any GOP candidate who agrees that Joe Biden won the election fair and square. And then there's January 6th. Recently, Trump said if he runs and regains the presidency, he'd look at pardoning those convicted of crimes at the U.S. Capitol that day. Republican Lindsey Graham strongly disagrees.
I think it's inappropriate. I don't want to reinforce that defiling the Capitol was okay.
Trump fired back.
Well, Lindsey Graham's wrong. I mean, Lindsey's a nice guy, but he's a rhino.
And so that's where we are in today's GOP. Republican congressmen who have been reliable conservative votes over the years are now called rhinos. Republicans in name only. The label has been bestowed on U.S. Senator Mitt Romney and others who joined Democrats to pass the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. I asked Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDowell about the name calling in a recent interview. So how do you kind of define rhino? I feel like that's changed over the years. Do you think that definition has changed in recent years? It seems like who was a rhino years ago.
I'm not as into dividing right now because we need everyone to go win against the Democrats. And I know everybody focuses on inter-party stuff, and that'll work out in the primaries. The RNC has to stay neutral in primaries.
Yet the RNC clearly recognizes where the momentum and energy is right now in the Republican Party. And that's why there is a proposal to remove Republicans Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger from the House Republican Conference due to their vocal support of the January 6th committee. The big mo, as in money, is also squarely with Donald Trump. His political operation starts the year with $122 million in the bank, much of it from small donations. It appears his post-election rhetoric has made him stronger. Some candidates running in the midterms credit Trump for changing the GOP message. It's become more of a populist party. It's no longer kind of like your grandfather's Republican Party.
And thank God. Unfortunately, the generations before us took pride in voting for conservatives, took pride in voting for Republicans, but they were getting the wool pulled over their eyes in Washington, and people were just voting down the line for people that essentially sold them up the river, moderate Republicans that would vote with the Chamber of Commerce and totally abandon some of what we find as core morals and ethics.
Even President Biden understands Trump's gravitational pull, which he believes has prevented him from getting Republican support.
Did you ever think that one man out of office could intimidate an entire party where they're unwilling to take any vote contrary to what he thinks should be taken for fear of being defeated in a primary? I've had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bump into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who've told me that they agree with whatever I'm talking about for them to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to defeat it in a primary.
I discussed the state of the GOP with Pennsylvania congressional candidate Kathy Barnett. How do you see the Republican Party? Is Trump kind of a litmus test for Republicans today?
You know, I mean, some say they are, but listen, we have, DC is a swamp, and in every swamp you have alligators, and you have some alligators that are on a rock sunbathing, and then you have other alligators that are right up on you. Democrats are the alligators that are right up on us. So we need to be real focused, real clear. Don't focus on the alligator on the rock sunbathing. Focus on the alligator that is right up on us and is about to destroy our country.
There's no doubt something is in the water that's led to a shift in the Republican current. The question remains whether it will lead to the much talked about wave that could retake the majority in November. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
I used to be a lot more involved in politics than I am today. And back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, if we were coming up on an election and the party was busy having internal disputes and getting mad at one another and trying to have litmus tests and all these other kinds of things, it was pretty much a sign that you weren't going to win the election because you couldn't unify and you couldn't get behind the candidates who were actually standing for election. I'm seeing that repeat out on a very large stage right now, and a lot of focus on January 6th, a lot of focus on an election that has been decided, whether you agree with the decision or not. The Electoral College, the votes were certified by the states, and then as it's the duty of the Vice President and the Senate to count those votes were counted, and a new president was put in office. It's time to move on. And if you focus all the attention on that and you have to have some kind of litmus test or pledge of loyalty or I agree with your version of events, well, then you're not going to move on and you're not going to focus on the important thing. The country is the important thing. The politics, the party, individual candidates, please, can we come together and say, as a country, we're facing enormous problems. Whether it's Ukraine, whether it's China, whether it's the rise of India, whether it's the rise of Iran, all of these things are deeply concerning and should be to every single American. The rise in inflation right here at home. If we're spending all our time trying to worry about this other stuff, things that you can't change, it's not going to make a difference. Focus on what makes a difference and can we come together? I'll say it again, a house divided cannot stand. If we don't realize that and come together and say, how can we have agreement? What should we do about the pressing problems facing us? Let's come to consensus for that. Well, then there's hope for America. If we spend all our time fighting among each other, well, then again, a house divided can't stand.